Welcome to Energy Linguist, a sacred space for awakening souls ready to receive divine transmissions and the raw truth that sets them free. I am Laura Ahern, a spiritual channel and energy translator here to bring through messages from highest guidance to help you hear your inner knowing, reclaim who you are beneath the noise, and live from the truth within. Take a breath. You've found the space where remembering begins. Hello, everyone. This is Laura, the Energy Linguist, and I am so grateful and excited to have you here with me today on this episode of Energy Linguist Podcast, the space where we get to decode your energy, heal your patterns, and awaken your path through the receiving of these divinely healing transmissions. And I'm extra excited about today's podcast for a lot of different reasons. For many of you who may be spiritually inclined, you may have a sense of what it's like to receive messages from outside yourself. Rarely in my life do I refer to myself as psychic, though I am, because there's this connotation to the word psychic that tends to conjure all of this kind of, uncomfortable vibrations. People have a lot of associations with what they think it is to be psychic. And at its core, the word psychic actually means the ability to be able to access information outside of one's own system. If you were with me on a previous podcast where we talked about what it means to be an empath, you may have already heard me say this, and you may identify with that ability more than you ever imagined you would. Having this ability to sense information outside of one's own system typically means that we are not coming into this intellectual understanding of it. Intellect doesn't come first. In fact, the information being received isn't actually touching our minds first. And it's important for me to touch on that as we start to kick off the messages that divinity is bringing through today, because divinity is starting to unveil a lot of truths today about your spiritual nature and your own spiritual capacity to lean into your intuition and to do exactly that, to access information outside of your own system. This type of work of channeling divine guidance on a podcast, I have to tell you all, it can be very disorienting because I don't remember a lot of what gets channeled. And the reason being is that it is not of the intellectual mind. I didn't figure out the messaging and plan it per se. I literally come on here and I open to divinity and ask them what it is you need to hear today. And the messaging that they are starting to warm you up into today is what they're calling a true remembering of your nature. When we hear the word remember, there's two different vibrations you might experience within this. One vibration might be the actual remembering, the putting pieces back together. And that is much of what we are doing, or divinity is inviting in during this podcast today. The other vibration of remembering actually is the vibration that exists beneath the word itself. So it exists within the root meaning of the word. And remember actually means to call back to mind. And the vibration they want you to embrace in today's message is a willingness to be called back to mindfulness again. And it's a mindfulness of your ancient wisdom, not of what we might, the stories that are on the surface that we might call to mind easily, but the mind of your wisdom, the mind of your own innate capacity to touch your intuition and to touch God from where you stand in human form today, to connect with that higher spiritual assistance so that you can come into a greater place of peace within your life. Recently, energies have been amping up during this awakening, and those energies can feel anything but exciting when we are riding these waves of this, what can feel very choppy or high voltage. Maybe it even feels chaotic, just pure chaos to you. And the visual they're giving me right now as I'm speaking is what it looks like if you've ever seen someone pressure wash something that maybe was covered in like muck or mud, where you spray and the end result is really glorious and beautiful and shiny. However, when it's actually being cleaned, all it's doing is kicking up all this dirt. And so Divinity wants me to give you this visual so that you can take comfort in the fact that if you feel like a lot of dirt is getting kicked up in your life right now, as many of us do, or you even feel like you're the one kicking up the dirt, they want you to understand that you are doing this with intention and you're doing it from this pure place of wanting to make something new again. And that newness is actually being called in by your highest self, this deeper spiritual knowing that they're touching on today. Today, as we bring you into the remembering, the biggest support that they yearn to give you today is to help you to escape the deceit and the chaos and the confusion that might be rising within your experience of the world right now. Right now, there is what they are showing me, this very, very slippery slope. And this slope is extraordinarily risky because if we slip down into the abyss, is what they're calling it, the majority of us will not make it back out. And we are going to continue to go deeper on this messaging over the course of more podcasts. So please continue to tune in, listen, re-listen if you need to expand your consciousness more into these messages, to receive it in a different vibration on a different day. I want to invite you to continue to receive it and continue this journey. And the reason that I am inviting this of you right out of the gates is because I have to tell you that recording this podcast today felt almost impossible to me to anchor the information because how much is coming through for us. Your angels, your deceased loved ones, divinity, this highest vibration of light and love is here to assist you, and they want you to know all things. They are attempting to unveil all things, and they do for me very often in something that seems so simple. When the veil gets lifted, we see the massive, infinite nature of what's actually occurring. And in order for me to help bring you into all of the things that they want you to know, we need to do it in a way that's as soft as possible, which is why the attempt to keep these channeled messages more condensed and then to allow us to expand even more gently in the next episode. It's almost like just taking breaths between conscious expansion. So today is a warm up in many ways. And what they are warming you up to is the understanding that the things you think are controlling you are not actually controlling you. That there is a choice here. Your choice is your power of freedom. It is your manifestation power. It's the power to create your reality. And they want to continue to work to bring you into this power as much as possible. And so today, we start off by helping you to understand the way in which you are actually experiencing your world. Because how many of you have wrestled with thoughts? All hands should be up because we all do. And the thoughts are typically a lot of assumptions they're showing me. So as I'm channeling this message, they're showing me you wrestling with, let's say, a dialogue between you and someone else that maybe hasn't happened yet, that you're imagining might happen, or maybe you're replaying one in your head over and over again. Maybe you're reworking it to try to defend and justify your point of view. Or maybe you're reworking it because you're wishing to find a way to help the other person understand what you're experiencing. And so often they give us example, and there's many examples of this, but often we jump into the trenches of the mind in this attempt to reorganize the storyline. And what they're saying to me clearly, and you will hear me say this on other episodes that build into a higher understanding, is that we cannot organize insanity by jumping into it. We cannot create order by jumping into the chaos. And so to understand this, I first want you to understand what insanity and its vibration and its roots actually means. What insanity means is to not be of sound, healthy mind. And so when we're talking about the vibration of healthy, we're actually meaning whole. We're meaning uninjured. And so the insanity that we attempt to wrestle with is the injured mind. Now, for those of you who have been listening to my Energy Linguist episodes, you understand that I speak of the mind in multi layers. So, what I speak of when I say mind is the conduit of the mind. It's what I call the conduit of the mind. And for those of you who have read my book, The True Calling, you have a greater understanding of why it's called the conduit of the mind, as it is associated with my energy evolution formula. The conduit of the mind is not just our thought processes. The conduit of the mind holds our thoughts, both conscious and unconscious, as well as our emotions, the things we're feeling, and the nuances of all of that interaction that occurs. Because when we feel something and then we think about it and rationalize it, what happens is we end up concluding upon it in a way that anchors beliefs within us and anchors an identity within us of who we believe ourselves to be. And so when we're talking about an unsound mind, an unhealthy mind, we're talking about an injured, not just thought process potentially, but we're talking about an injured emotion, which you're going to learn today is the core of what is creating your reality. It is the core place in which we can start to get back in the driver's seat, to take back control of many of the things that we maybe do not like the outcomes of in our current experiences. And we're also talking about an injured belief or identity. Maybe it's a belief that you hold that is out of integrity and resonance with what your soul truly knows. Maybe it was inherited. Maybe it's something that you just heard so much in your external world that you internalized it and it became a core component of how you identify yourself. I feel that rise through the heart into the throat as I say that. What they're showing me, it's almost like this lodged piece of limitation that exists between the belief and how it's creating who you think you are and what you believe you're capable of. And so today, they're starting to put you back in the driver's seat to understand how you're actually experiencing your world, what's happening when you're perceiving your world within your system, so that you can come into a higher understanding of what has created these beliefs and identity. It's what I call misidentity, because usually it's this idea of ourselves that is very rooted in our painful emotions, filled with regret, self-shame, guilt. And we get to start to clear that out today so that we can rise to a place of understanding how to mitigate it and get in the way before these unconscious cycles continue to take hold and continue to run. When you imagine perceiving your world I am sure you imagine that you see the world through your eyes, and then your mind starts to figure it out. How many of you that is how you believe you experience your world? Is that the information comes in through our eyes into our mind, and we start to have this very neural cognitive experience of it, right? The brain starts to kind of put the information together and figure things out. This isn't actually very accurate at all. What divinity is coming through to help you to realize today is that you don't actually experience the world through your eyes or your thoughts first. You're actually experiencing your world. You're taking in your world through your heart chakra, this heart essence, rather than your eyes and your brain. The information that comes in centrally to this torus field of yours, this field that holds all of your chakras. The heart chakra is the bridge between our material energy centers and our spiritual energy centers. And so it's this doorway through which all enters. Now, what's really incredible is that neuroscience validates what spirit is telling me. Neuroscience has shown us that the heart has approximately 40,000 neurons. It's actually what they call the heart brain. It's got its own little brain, and it can sense information before our brain ever becomes aware of it. And it also processes information and learns and remembers things independently of the cranial brain. So the truth is that our heart is learning and remembering things separate from what our mind has yet concluded, is how they want me to convey that to you. Another huge validating piece of this is that our heart, the fibers, the nerves that are connected from the heart to the brain and the brain to the heart, it's known as the vagus nerve, has more ascending pathways from the heart to the brain than it does from the brain to the heart. In fact, it's at a 9-to-1 ratio that the heart carries much more information to the brain than the brain carries to the heart. So the heart is sending far more signals to the brain than the brain ever communicates to the heart. Now, I want you to take a breath into this, because this is pretty miraculous to receive and begin to understand. Because what it starts to help us to understand is how imperative it is for us to honor the things we feel first and foremost. Divinity is showing me massive amounts of health issues occurring on account of our inability to properly process and honor that which we feel. And when you look at it, I believe in the US, one of the leading causes of death is cardiac related, it's heart related. And there is a ancient wisdom that exists within our hearts that we can tune into to help change the course of our lives. So what do they mean when they say that? What they mean is that we not only can trust the things we feel, but we can choose to be brave enough to look at the things we feel before this domino effect occurs, through which we then choose to hide from what we feel. So what is that domino effect that they're talking about? What happens is that our heart is first sensing and responding to our environment. In fact, it has been shown that our heart has measurable changes about 4 to 7 seconds before stimuli reaches it. So it actually knows sometimes before the external environment reflects something, and it certainly knows before our mind knows. and it generates the strongest electromagnetic field in our body. It's about 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain. And it extends about 8 to 10 feet beyond your physical body. So it's a field. And this emotional state is creating a field that is magnetizing certain things to you. And for those of you who are experiencing maybe emotional cycles, and when they say cycles, they're saying the things that you don't want to feel. That's why they're cycling, is we've been afraid to feel them. I want to bring you into the enlightened perspective of why maybe you're not wanting to feel them and how you can become more courageous and willing to face that which has been cycling so that it doesn't have to cycle any longer. When we take in our experiences, right, we're perceiving our reality through our heart first. What happens is that it's the stimuli, right, that triggers an emotion. And then the heart responds, it feels. And it sends a signal to our brain to then interpret the information. So our brain's primary objective becomes to then align what we've felt and organize what we've felt, make sense of it through information or experiences that probably already exist in our memories. So when I talk about the conduit of the mind, our emotions get triggered first. And when we feel something, our brain then seeks to understand it and categorize it, typically for our safety, right? Evolutionarily speaking, we wanted to remember things that were scary, upsetting, risky to us. That's why it gets stored in our long-term memory so that we could then prevent ourselves from coming in harm's way again. We often forget how harmful negative emotions feel to us. And so those get stored and anchored in our minds in a way that can be very damaging over time. What they're saying is it damages the framework of your reality if we don't properly decide around them. You see, I use the word decide. What they're pointing us back into is the vibration of choice. The vibration of choice is our throat chakra energy. It is to choose. And what they're asking you to choose today is the interpretation of that which you are feeling. Because what happens is when we feel something and the heart communicates that feeling to the mind, and then the mind seeks to interpret that based on what is already there, what often ends up happening is that the brain then narrates and rationalizes what it is that we felt. That narration is occurring based on a very old, outdated, they say stagnant and decaying story of us. One that not only is it no longer keeping you safe, but it is starting to create significant pain and loss in your life. For those of you who will be joining me in the Redwoods this upcoming March of 2026 at this incredibly powerful retreat, what you will experience there is an opportunity to rewrite what I call your neuro narrative. My healing modality, the Lore Light Integration Method, helps us to actually break down these narratives to rewrite that which has been automatically firing and wiring throughout our whole neural system, not just of the mind, but our whole physical body, and to release that stagnant, stuck energy, that stagnant, stuck narrative, to set you free on a level in which you have not yet experienced in this lifetime. Understanding that your brain has a narrative, it has a storyline where it has repeated, they say regurgitate over and over and over again, this idea of who you are and what is possible for you is so important for us to acknowledge so that we can start to rewrite that truth. We can then intentionally decide differently and embrace true freedom from within. Often the narratives and the rationalization that is occurring within your thought process, within the brain element, is anything but just. What divinity is saying is there is so much injustice in the way that you think upon yourself. And I do understand that when we feel things that are painful, it is hard for us to believe sometimes that it could possibly be good, that there could possibly be some sort of light or lesson or wisdom in it. But the only way that we are willing to have the courage to face the pain and derive the wisdom out of it is if we are willing to pull off of that narrative and rationalize differently. It only occurs if we are willing to look at the experience as us being the experiencer of it, but not the experience itself. For far too long, you have been identifying yourself as the experience and associating your worth, your value, based on the painful experience you went through. There has been an internalization of the experience that this means this about me. And the this that is being concluded upon is what's creating the cycling of suffering in your life. And divinity says it is now time for you to break free of that cycle. And the power is completely in your hands. They want you to understand that, yes, the brain's job is more about making sense of what the heart has already felt. And yet you can get in the way of the automation that has been occurring within your life by, number one, understanding what it is they've told you today, which is that you are experiencing your worth through emotion. And then number two, understanding that it is up to you to decide on the meaning that exists within that experience. For those of you who would like to dive into a really powerful course of mine called Meaning Decoded, I highly recommend that you visit lauraahern.com/programs and learn more about it. Dive into the Meaning Decoded program. This is where you can come into a deeper understanding of your power to be the decider of the meaning of experiences in your life. Divinity is here to help you see the truth that has been hidden from you. And it has been hidden because it has been masked under the layers of misunderstanding, the layers of hiding. And it is causing us to live in a cycle of suffering that it is now time for us to choose to step out of. In future episodes, I'm going to go deeper with you on what these cycles of suffering really mean for us. This living in hell and what that means, what that actually is causing us to live in these states of suffering, and what you can do to break free of it, while also talking about this more empowered way of your ability to create and truly magnetize the things that you desire to experience into your life. And so for more, please subscribe to Energy Linguist podcast and listen to the new episodes each week so that you can continue to receive the support that you deserve during this awakening, so that we can break free from the chaos, break free from the cycles, break free from the confusion, and truly live your life on a level that you have never lived it on before. I'm sending you so much light and love for the receiving of these healing transmissions. And I cannot wait to be together with you again on the next episode of Energy Linguist podcast. Thank you for being here. Be blessed. Thank you for being here, for listening with your heart, and for opening to the truth meant just for you. If this transmission resonated, I invite you to visit lauraahern.com for free resources and sacred support to help you accelerate your awakening and walk your path with more power, trust, and grace. Until next time, trust what you feel,
honor what you know, and believe in your power to create something greater than you've ever imagined.